So there's disturbing new video showing the growing brutality of ISIS in the Middle East. The latest victims, once again, Christian Ethiopians in Libya. One group shown here beheaded on the beach. The White House denouncing the attack and for the first time right away calling the victims Christians, saying, in quote, the United States condemns in the strongest terms the brutal mass murder purportedly of Ethiopian Christians by ISIL-affiliated terrorists in Libya. Joining me now for some real talk, Franklin Graham of Samaritan's Purse. It's great to have you on The Real Story today, Franklin, for the real truth about what's going on all across the world with regard to Christians and being persecuted. Let me start with the fact that the White House, this time around, actually is acknowledging that they are Christians. What do you make of it?
Well, first of all, Gretchen, as a Christian, my hope and faith is in Jesus Christ. I gave my life to Him when I was 22 years old, and I know that if my head gets chopped off, I'm going to be in the presence of Almighty God, not because I'm a good guy, but because I gave my life to Christ. And so I'm happy that the White House is finally acknowledged, but acknowledging this is not enough, Gretchen. There has to be some action that has to take place. First of all, we need to declare war on ISIS, and we need to go wherever they are, whether it's Iraq, whether it's Libya, and we need to use our special forces. We need to take whatever air action, but we have to put boots on the ground. You're not going to defeat these people the way we're doing it now. And then secondly, this is something that's going to make...
Well, so sorry to interrupt. I just want to clarify. So because President Obama has declared war on ISIS in so many words, he said he wanted, to eradicate the world of them, but obviously you don't believe he's doing enough.
No, I don't, because he's responsible for ISIS. He pulled our troops out of Iraq. When our general said, don't do this, it's going to create a power vacuum, and which it did. And now we have ISIS. And we have the problem in Libya because of the president's policies towards Libya, and the bombing of Libya, and the fall of Omar Gaddafi, and leaving a power vacuum, and now you have ISIS. But what we've got to do in this country, Gretchen, is we have to stop allowing the immigration of Muslims into this country who come from countries that have active terrorist cells. So I'm calling for the halt to all immigration of Muslims to this country if they come from a country that has Islamic terrorist cells in those countries.
Reverend, how do we know if they are actually terrorists or not?
You don't. You're just going to have to you're going to say you don't come. And you just can't allow people to keep coming from these countries that are going to bring terrorism into this nation. So you're going to have to just say, we're going to halt immigration until ISIS is defeated. And if we don't do this, Gretchen, we're going to have a huge problem in this country, just like what we're seeing right now in Minnesota.
I know. And that's my home state. And that started with the Christians in Minnesota, bringing them in and taking care of them over the last couple of decades. I mean, I'm very familiar with that story. I'm just wondering, Reverend, if we're going to run into difficulty with discrimination if we do something as drastic as what you're suggesting.
Of course you're going to have people calling that this is discrimination, but Gretchen, this is a war. And when you're in a war, you're going to have to discriminate if you're going to win the war. If we're just going to have these policies where we have a statement coming out from the White House saying we condemn this, well, we've got to condemn it, but we've got to go after them. And Gretchen, you're just going to have to take them out and kill them.
Okay, so what do you plan to do?
We're going to have to stop allowing them to come into this country.
Well, Reverend Grant, what is your plan then? How are you going to try to make this happen if you think this would actually work?
First of all, Gretchen, is halting immigration into this country from people who are coming from Muslim countries. That's easy. But you're going to have to put boots on the ground. You're going to have to put soldiers back in Iraq, and not just advising the Iraqi army. The Iraqi army is now the Iranian army, and they're controlled. So much of Baghdad now are Shiites, and they support Iran. And so we have created a huge power shift in the Middle East. And ISIS is developed by the Sunnis, and that's Saudi Arabia and all the Gulf states. They've been financing ISIS to combat the Shiites.
Yep.
And if we don't recognize where we are, Gretchen, we're going to lose this thing. We've got to put soldiers back in there, and we're going to have to be in the Middle East for a long time. Well, it's not something you're just going to defeat in a matter of hours or a few days or a few months.
It's a scary proposition, and obviously this is something that has just blown up, no pun intended, over the last 6 years or so. But at least now the White House is actually saying that those being beheaded are Christians. A small step in the right direction, possibly. Franklin Graham, I got to wrap it there, but it's great to have you on The Real Story. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Gretchen.